Hey everybody, welcome to the Digital Influence Show. It's Thursday afternoon around 2 o'clock Eastern time. Hey, this is going to be a little bit different. I'm not sure where Tom is. He's coming. I'm sure he's coming. I'm sure he just got put behind on some things, but I didn't want you all waiting. So it kind of reminds me, Trevor, if you're listening, you were saying how a single podcast or an episode by yourself is a totally different beast. And I have not conquered going online by myself or going live. I don't know, always thought it would be too weird for me just to keep talking and keep talking and keep talking. And as those of you that know me, I can have a little bit of that verbal diarrhea going for me. And so I've stayed away from it. But here we are today. Tom's running late. And so, first thing, invite you all, if you want to join the conversation, add into the comments and let us know what you're thinking, what your thoughts are. Say, listen to that. I even said us. There's no us. It's just me. Maybe I have a little mouse in my pocket or something. But okay, so we're going to talk today about lead gen versus demand gen and how this applies into social selling. James, Chris, big shout out to you in bringing some clarity around this for me in the last couple of days. I forget when we talked yesterday, the day before, but let's see here. All right, everybody. Tom is on his way. You don't have to just listen to me the whole time now. Okay, so James and I were chatting the other day, and I think he brought some clarity for me around how to label the difference in what we're saying is good social selling versus social selling that sucks. Um, you know, as marketers had lead generation and they're moving more into demand generation, what's the difference? And then how does that difference apply into any activity that we're doing inside of social media? So there is Tom coming in. And hey, Tom, we're live already. I'm going to keep going as he's figuring that out. So as marketing departments have moved from lead generation into demand generation, the big question is, well, really, what's the difference? And then if we use those terms and the difference between lead generation and demand generation for marketing, what does that really mean for social selling? Again, is it the difference between social selling that works or social selling that I like to refer to as social selling that sucks? So, Tom, welcome. I'm sorry, it was all my fault, everybody. I forgot to actually send him the StreamYard link. So, yes,
It doesn't work virtually without the link yet.
yeah,
We'll get there though.
I am so sorry. You know what? I thought
And
that
you were
we
probably
had it
bad
with.
mouthing me before I got there, going, "God, that Burton
I,
guy's
wa-
late."
I,
And what this is
I didn't get there yet. I was
okay.
going to give you like 2 or 3 minutes before I started the bad mouthing, but
Okay, all right, fair
um,
enough.
so we got Trevor on with the chat. And Tom, I don't know if you heard me much, but you and I were talking about this last night about the difference between lead generation and demand generation. And I wanted to say this, Trevor, thank you for adding this because it is so true, right? Inside of a company, you've got some teams that might be doing their lead generation, and you have other teams that are doing demand generation. Um, but I want to talk about, and you've got this in your book in the revenue zone too. Really, what's the difference? What's the difference philosophically? And how do we apply that into social, whether it's social selling as a sales professional, it's using social to expand network as a business owner, or really anybody and trying to use these digital networks to expand their influence and network. So why don't you
Yeah,
take that from there? I'm tired of
yeah.
listening to myself.
So it's interesting because it's funny. I even had another conversation with a friend last night on this, and I'm starting to see this. There's this. Well, we're switching from lead gen to demand gen, like it's a tactic.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and I
Well, it
like to
is a
hear.
tactic, isn't it?
Well, it's a strategy, and I think
Okay.
that's the big
There you go. Fair enough.
a big thing that it's not about, hey, I'm going to turn this knob and go over here and do this, or it's a different type of
Hmm.
campaign. And so I love to hear that. I love to hear when people are, talking about transitioning from, lead gen, the lead gen philosophy. We'll talk about that in a minute, to a more of a demand gen philosophy and strategy. So I love it.
Right.
But then, that's quite a change philosophically. And it has tentacles. It goes out into other parts of the business. So it's also a business strategy at the same time. But the biggest philosophical difference, which I think you were touching on, is in the lead gen philosophy, right? The goal is I try to get names, I try and get,
Hmm.
identities, and then I follow up with those identities and try and get them to do something. In most world, have a call or turn into a
Hmm.
sales prospect. Some people follow up with those identities very aggressively, as we know. Some of them follow up
Hmm.
less aggressively, but it doesn't matter. It's still the same concept, right? I'm getting a name, and
Right.
then I'm going to try and jump on that name to then turn them into somebody who's willing to engage with my sales organization or with my company. And we've
Right.
talked about before why there's a lot of reasons why it's kind of an obsolete old stool strategy, but it's still going on in a huge way. I was talking to a friend of mine last night who works for a very, very large biotech company. And he was actually in one of their board meetings, and they were talking about their go to market strategy. And, they were talking about hiring all these SDRs, and we were going to get all these MQLs. And, he's read the revenue zone, and he's sitting there like shaking his head, but this is prevalent, right? The lead gen
Hmm.
philosophy is prevalent. The demand gen philosophy is very different in a sense that we're not out hunting MQLs, and then we're not, trying to jump on those MQLs to see how quickly we can turn them into a sales conversation. What we're really doing, I like to say, is building a community. We're building
Hmm.
a relationship with a number of prospects and customers, or prospects that could be customers, and we're using a combination of, it's not any one thing. It's not just having a podcast or I have a blog, it's using a collection of different strategies that revolve around thought leadership, value, content, you know, know-how, basically, and then using that to enable the prospect to, again, go down their yellow brick road on their own as much as possible and end up in the revenue zone. So obviously there's a lot that goes into that, but
Hmm.
philosophically, that's the difference between the two. And
Yeah.
it's a big philosophical difference, even, I mean,
Yeah.
everything's different. KPIs, everything you measure is very different between those two philosophies.
Mhm. And expectations, right? I mean, we've gotten into um, this world where it's about 100 calls a day KPIs
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
X amount of people enrolled in email cadence KPIs. And like we talked about last time too, there are some perceptions that this is really passive. Oh, we're just going to go post stuff and we're going to wait for the rain to happen. And that's so far from it. This is very active, it's very tactical.
Mhm.
And that's where I think what I love about our, kind of yin and yang going on here with well, that's not the right way to say it. The 1-2 punch, I guess, with the revenue zone and my social outreach system. It is very tactical, but it's not bugging people. It's sharing information. As you said, I like it's about building network, sharing what you know. I really appreciated Mason saying this a couple weeks ago on the show with me. He said, his whole strategy, and to summarize, he said in 8 months he had data and he had closed like $280,000 in new revenue, and he had about 1.4 in pipeline purely from using LinkedIn to build network. He didn't say prospect. He didn't say, I mean, I think it's called social prospecting, but what he did was he said, I knew my audience. They were ABM people. They were marketing departments struggling with ABM. And he said, I gave away all my secret sauce in my comment, in my post. Everything.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
gave it, this is what you do. This is how you do it. This is what you do. And then at the end of it, he said, but the great thing is that people would then send me messages and say, been reading this, love it. Can you help us?
Hmm. Hmm.
That for me is the epitome of demand gen. And when we apply that in social, well, yeah, it's posting, right? It's commenting, it's strategically commenting on or commenting strategically on the right people, doing it in a regular cadence, and then having systems or tactics in place of, well, when do you send a connection request, or
Yep.
trying,
Yep.
do you send it cold versus send it after a comment, and how do you find influencers in your space or names in your space and then go join those digital conversations to elevate your own brand and your own name. And Tom, I've known you've done that exceptionally well in the last few months, since your books come out.
Yeah, I don't know about exceptionally well, but I'm definitely learning. But what you just talked about is why I use the word strategy in the beginning. Is and think about this: if you were to move, from the lead gen strategy to the demand gen strategy, just to put a label on them,
Hmm.
and you really in the demand gen strategy transformed how you were going about your marketing, to your point, right? Really, however that may be, and then also transformed at the same time how you went through the sales cadence with the social selling, social prospecting aspect of it, and you put those two together. You talk about a
Hmm.
1 + 1 = 5,
Right.
in my opinion, right? In terms of really, just if you look at the effectiveness or the potential effectiveness of a sale or a revenue organization, sales and marketing, a revenue organization, by putting those two things together and having them work together. So now when you reach
Hmm.
out to, whether you're reaching out to somebody individually, yes, you want to build a relationship with them individually, but they also now have a relationship with the company. They have an
Right.
understanding of your product and service. The quality of that individual relationship is going to be way better. And we heard some of that from Carson
Hmm.
Hetty on what he did on his account, right? There was a lot of relationship building that was going on at the corporate level, and then he was doing the relationship building at the individual level, and the two of them
Digital
together,
levels.
right, was like a hockey stick in terms of the effectiveness. So
Yeah.
I don't know that you can do one without the other. I don't know that you could say, well, we're going to change our marketing strategy, but we're still going to have all these SDRs making cold calls. It's like it doesn't.
Right.
That's what I mean
Yeah.
by
It doesn't.
strategy. It's not a tactic; it's a strategy that you have
Yeah.
to look
Well,
at.
and I mentioned early, and I can't remember if you were on or not, but James Crisp and I had a conversation, a couple days ago, and he's going to be a guest on the show tomorrow. He's with a company called Turtle out of the UK, and he and I have been talking over the last several years. And his conversation with me was, you know what, my company has embraced social selling now. And of course, I said, well, what is that? What does that look like? And I'm going to save the depth of that for tomorrow and let him share it. But what I loved hearing is he said, first thing he said is marketing supports it. Marketing is
Right.
involved.
Yep.
Marketing's helping us with content ideas,
Hmm.
not content, right? This isn't employee advocacy like, oh, here's the brochures, everybody go post
Right.
them.
Right.
But he was saying they're involved with helping us with content ideas. And they have a dedicated Slack channel to where they all talk about content that they're thinking about or that they did, that they posted, and how it worked. And he said the CEO's behind it. And I tell you what, when you get companies where the CEO or somebody at the C-suite level is going to champion this, the sky's the limit. Because I mean, we just see it over and over again with guests on the show. Like, you know, hey, I just started talking.
Yeah.
I just started posting. I just started
Yeah.
commenting on other
Yeah.
people's, and as you say, hockey sticks.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think that's great that he said that, the marketing team is supporting, right. It's
Mhm.
adding a tailwind to what's happening at the individual level along the
Yeah.
way. But by building the trust with if you remember right in the whole revenue zone concept, you're building trust and you're creating demand together. They don't,
Yep.
and so if the marketing team is helping you create demand and build trust at the corporate
Yeah.
level, and then you're doing that at the individual level, that's and you're
Yeah.
building that goodwill and you're building that anyway. it's very powerful when you think about it.
Yeah.
It just,
And
takes a bit to change all that.
yeah. And that's where I think for anyone listening, the reason why Tom and I have connected so well on this. Now, Tom and I go back several years. We even actually had, shared a beer and had a Mexican dinner together back before COVID. But what Tom just said right there is the key in this whole demand gen. It's building trust and creating demand.
Mhm.
And you do that at the corporate level, the content, the style of your content, of whether it's blog, it's video, it's whatever. It's who is in the content, right? If you start getting your C-suite, you start getting your leadership in a lot of this content, it's a huge impact on the way people perceive the company.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that's where the whole chief evangelist officer role has come in over the last 3 4 years. Um, but it's that process. And for me, with the social outreach system, it's how do we build trust? Well, we have to open our mouth. That means content. I don't care if you're doing a video, you're doing a podcast, you're writing posts, you're writing articles, everything that appeals to you. Building trust starts with you've got to share your information, and then building that relationship is, it's not just if you post it and wait for people to come. We have to actively, and this is strategically, go engage with our prospects and the posts that they're engaging with. And I think that's really important because so many times people will all hear, well, my clients don't post. Well, that's okay. Or my prospects don't post. That's okay. There's really simple, cool features that get around that.
Yeah.
You go to their post activity feed, you see what articles they've liked or commented on, and you comment. And LinkedIn's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, right? LinkedIn's going to
Well,
send them a
and even if they're
notification.
not active on LinkedIn, most people are active on another social media channel, Facebook or otherwise, if nothing else for personal, so
Mhm.
it doesn't always just have to be LinkedIn too. There's all kinds of
Yeah,
ways to reach, whoever you're trying to reach through social.
right. Okay, I'm going to be a little rude here, and it's I'm not being rude. I'm just showing something out. But this is a comment that we just got as we're live on the podcast. Obviously, somebody who's not at all listening to what we talk about. But this person just came into our comments and pitch slapped everybody, right? Like, I'm sorry, Emma. Come on, man. This is not. I mean, Tom, you and I talk about how do we bring like humanity and respect back into sales,
Yeah.
and that is through building relationship, building trust, having conversations, and not trying to insert yourself into somebody's business.
I guess
Like,
he was trying to punch our point home about the lead gen strategy.
oh man, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, at least there we go. Thanks, Andre. I'm glad you saw that too. if if I wasn't on live, I would actually pop in there and delete the comment, but we'll do that later. So anyway, well, Tom, what else would you want to say? I was thinking about the mindset shift, like we talked about a few days ago, around lead gen versus demand gen.
Yeah, I mean that's what the topic we talked about on Tuesday. Um, Again, it's all part of that, I guess, transformation from the lead gen, or I like to call it old school because I really do think it's old school. It's
Hmm.
really, and it was fine 10 years ago. It made sense 10 years ago or
Well,
whenever,
it worked 10 years
and it
ago
worked 10
because
years
it
ago,
was
right?
new. Right.
Right. But so the old school approach and to the sort of modern approach that we're talking about, demand gen, social, whatever, but let's just call it demand gen for lack of a better label, is yeah, it's a mindset shift. And we talked about we don't need to revisit everything, go back and listen to the episode from Tuesday, but that's the start. And
Hmm.
I think when I hear words like we're moving from lead gen to demand gen, which I love to hear those words, but I often wonder,
But
is that mindset shift actually occurred, or is somebody going after the shiny object?
Is it
Oh, I'm going to
just a
start a
word?
podcast or I'm going to start a blog, and somehow that's going to, how that happens, right? Is like it becomes a tactic versus a strategy. And then because it's, looks like it could be a silver bullet, and the
Hmm.
mindset's not there. And if the mindset's not there, this isn't going to work necessarily overnight. It's not instant gratification. It's something that's a process and an ongoing piece. And if it doesn't
Hmm.
work, you don't have the right, or you're not seeing immediate results, I should say, and you don't
Right.
have that insight, you're going to just boomerang right back and do the same thing again that you've always known and had comfort with. So it is a bit of a mindset transformation that has to go on from the top. I mean, if the CEO or the top executives are not in that mindset shift, and you're down at a marketing level or a revenue or a sales level trying to convince them, that's a tough way to go. That's a
Yeah.
hard that's a hard move. So yeah, that mindset's very, very important.
Yeah. And I think a big part of it is also uh, getting C-suite buy-in. Like somebody with authority needs to champion this.
Yep.
So,
No, it's very high. It has to come top down, and it's a business strategy, because when you start really looking at it, and we can do another episode. I know we're almost out of time today, but if we could do another episode, is when you really look at it from a top down perspective, the tentacles
mhm,
of how this goes into all parts of the organization, right? Whether
yeah,
you're, customer service, marketing, even product, if you're a product company, or if you're a distributor or a manufacturer or whatever the case may be, it permeates into other parts of the company. So it
yeah,
has to be looked at from a top down perspective.
yeah,
Otherwise it runs into a wall.
yeah. Hey, Andre, hold on one second. I'm going to come back to your question because I think Tom is a really good guy to answer that right now. But I want to show this first because I like the way Trevor summarized this. Is the predictable revenue model is entrenched, and the lead gen tactics is an outgrowth of that
Yes.
mindset.
Yes.
And unwinding lead gen means unwinding predictable revenue. And that's, I mean, one of the things that I've said, and I know this is, it, I might be walking a thin line here, especially as we move funnel amplified and go raising rounds for funding. Um, in some ways, the VC world like really thrashed sales. It became, we're going to put all these millions in a company. And then what companies did with that, they had to grow fast. And so they would go put a whole bunch of butts in seats and give them phones and email and say, go. And it was because this predictable revenue model had to be followed because there were people looking at the P&Ls every month. And there were VCs behind it that had to hit certain numbers and be ready to, get new investment, whatever the rules of their funds were. And it just created this entire cluster of activity that wasn't human, it wasn't respectful, it wasn't honoring people. And at the end of the day, business is just about relationships.
Yep. Well, in yeah, so the predictable revenue book, right? The Aaron Ross book was the thing that really kicked off this generation of activity.
Hmm.
I was actually on their podcast a month or so, or 6 weeks ago, and they're the predictable revenue podcast, which came from Aaron Ross and that book. That company evolved out of his um, that book, and you
Yeah,
know they're they know the world's changing, right? So we all still need
yeah,
predictable revenue. It's not that we don't want predictable revenue, but the strategies and philosophy that was in the book is exactly what Trevor was saying. Is it was
hmm,
based around that lead gen model, right? I get MQLs,
right,
I feed them to my SDRs, and that I think when that book came out was 2009, maybe somewhere in that
right.
neighborhood. So, you
And it
know,
was excellent then,
yeah,
right? I
yeah,
mean, and the philosophy behind it, the strategies behind it, and that's where HubSpot with landing pages and gates and email automation to
mhm,
follow up,
mhm,
like all of that made sense then because you know we were still new to this internet thing. I know it had been a decade in, but in the big picture of history, we were still new. And I think that big fundamental shift from where buyers were so reliant on salespeople or industry information to get their information. It was the first time in history that all of a sudden we didn't have to go to somebody,
Yep.
generally a human, to get information.
Yep. Yep.
And we could download a white paper or a PDF, and we didn't care about giving away our emails
Hmm.
until we learned years later what marketers
Yep.
were going to do with our email
Right.
addresses.
Right. Until it got abused.
So,
It's like
yeah.
everything.
So, Tom, as we're going to wrap up here, but Andre, I appreciate you asking this question, and I think it's a really great question for a lot of people. And um, this question is, how do I get people to follow and share? I post daily now, and I have only 2,000 followers. Andre, thanks
Yeah.
for that. Tom, what do you suggest?
Well, it's an very interesting question, because the only way that, it's interesting. I was again on another call with a friend last night, and he was telling me, "Hey, I'm seeing all your stuff on LinkedIn and I really like it." And he's even like reciting some of the stuff I had done. And yet I've never seen a like or a comment from him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the way that you really start to obviously move in the network, right, and get the algorithm working in your favor, is getting where people actually will engage with your content. But I think we all have a large number of just, I guess they called lurkers. I don't really like that word, but spectators, people that
Mm-hmm.
just like to consume, but they don't necessarily want to engage. I think there is um, maybe a fallacy that exists about, well, God, if I hit like or if I comment, I don't know, there's something, I'm putting myself out there, or I'm committing to something or whatever. And no, it really is actually not true. It's really more of an acknowledgement that you found this valuable, right? And that therefore others
Mm-hmm.
should see it. And that's how the algorithm uses it. So to answer your question is, I was thinking about this last night, is the only question I know is to ask people and let them know, say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'd really appreciate you liking, if you like it and you see it, like it, right? Just put like, don't even
Yeah.
worry about a comment. But if you also notice on LinkedIn, they make it easy to comment if you even want to put in a simple, hey, I liked it, or this was great, or, you don't want to sit down and put down a more meaningful comment. You can do that as well. So they're trying to make it easy for people to engage without spending a lot of time. But I think you
Mm-hmm.
actually have to ask people, number one. Number two, which is I'm not such a big fan of, is you can say, well, get more people in your network that do engage, which is a good thing, right? It's good to have people in your
Mm-hmm.
network that engage, but when you're building your tribe on LinkedIn, your tribe or your community is not necessarily just people that are going to engage. It's people that you want to reach with your message, and not all of
Right.
those people do engage. So I think you have to ask, and I even think there could even be we could do a webinar or a session on this about, because I think there's some just fallacies and things that exist from people that, and I think I had it even
Mm-hmm.
before I started all of this, that, well, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to click that button or whatever. And anyway, I think
Yeah.
that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. That's cool. Thanks, Tom. And Andre, you know what I would say is just coming back to your original question. Um, if you want people to follow and share, number one is asking, like, who do you really need? Like, in your own business, you've got 2,000 followers. Great. Do you need 5,000? Like, you may not even need 5,000. What do you need to run your business? How many sales do you need to make this year? And who are your prospects, your ideal customers? Like, let's focus on that part of your business first before we get too all in just like, hey, I want 50,000 followers, right? The second thing I would say is you need to follow and share other people's
Good
stuff.
point. Good
Like,
point.
if you want to get, you got to give. I
Sure.
really believe in that, give and it shall be given. So go into other people's and follow other people, comment on their post, comment on posts that your prospects are engaging with. And this is all part of my social outreach system. Is when you go comment on posts that your prospects are engaging with, you got a lot of things happening here. Number one, LinkedIn will send them a notification. But number two is, it's not just to that person, it's anyone else that liked or commented on that post. You're expanding your reach. right? And then the other thing you're doing is you're influencing the algorithm, because the algorithm sees that you and this person have been engaging in similar posts. The algorithm doesn't really differentiate that it's you doing it, because they see they liked it and then you comment. You're just strategically doing it, right? I'm going to Tom's profile and looking at his post activity every day, and I'm commenting on posts that Tom's liked or commented on. Well, after just a few days, the algorithm's going to see Tom and I act on the same post. And with LinkedIn's goal is that we all come back to LinkedIn more often. Well, then it's going to make the assumption Tom and Brandon must know each other, like each other, comment on the same stuff. They're both active. Let's start showing their content to each other. So I know that's kind of kind of deeper explanation there, but Andre, I'd say you guys start following more people. You need to go comment on other people's posts. You got to go and be strategic about who they are and be consistent. It's not, unfortunately, it's not just, hey, I'm going to go post a bunch of stuff and then everybody's going to start following me.
Right.
Um, so, and my opinion is the asking people, Andre, with, putting your hashtag and asking them to follow and share. I think the value of hashtags is when people start searching in social based on your content. Not so much that people are going to start following the hashtag as a way to follow you. So I hope that helped, Andre. I really appreciate that question. So, Tom, do you want to summarize this up for the day?
Um, yeah, so I think that was a really good, I don't think this will be the last time we're having a conversation about the transition from lead gen uh, to demand gen, that
Yeah.
philosophical area. And I think as we continue to unpack it, and we can get into more of the details of all of that. But the thing that I'm excited about is I do believe there is a movement starting to occur. And we're in the
Yeah.
very early stages, very, very early stages.
Mhm.
There's a lot of people out there on LinkedIn and otherwise that have really been evangelizing this demand gen concept. And so it's
Mhm.
starting to get hit home, right? You
Yep.
being
You're
one of the
welcome, Andre.
yeah.
Thanks for joining us today. Sorry, Tom.
So anyway, I think that it's great to see that the movement occurring. We're starting to see, it becoming much more aware. It's becoming something that companies are really looking at. So
Hmm.
now it's how do you do it right? So it doesn't just become a tactic and a shiny object. And then, it's like anything else, it didn't work. And then you end up wanting to go back. And that's my biggest concern, right? Is that if it's not done right, then people will believe it doesn't
Yep.
work and then they'll try and go back. But if it's done right, and then I think that's what we need to keep looking at is how do we keep spotlighting others and examples of it
Hmm.
being done right so people get motivated
Yeah.
to really continue with it.
And I think, Tom, that this is also a catalyst. Like, for me, it's like finally, what this is coming. And it's everybody knows. I mean, I've had this conversation with a good friend yesterday. Like, I knew when we launched Funnel Amplified, we were early. I don't think I realized how early we were and how challenging it's been and difficult for us to get. Um, we've had a lot of like, wow, this is really cool. This is neat. Every company needs this. And then ghosted, no contract. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, how, what is going on? And I think there is a lot more momentum. And I even think to the point, one, you and I have talked about, I'm going to change the name of the podcast. I just don't know what to yet. So maybe anyone listening, you have ideas. But I'm thinking, moving into this social demand gen um, space is a place that we can lead because we love it, we're passionate about it, and create the community of more people talking about it.
Yeah, and I love it because I actually believe and I know I've seen it firsthand is that businesses will grow faster and their customers will
Hmm.
be happier and they'll be more loyal and they're going to be that much better off, right? It's
Yeah.
like at the end of the day, why do this unless there's a real benefit? That's the real
Hmm.
benefit from doing it.
You
But
know,
anyway,
the irony for me with this is the companies I have helped are doing really, really well with it.
Yeah.
And then we do it for ourselves, and we do really well at starting conversations, but we haven't been as strong as I would like to be at adoption. And I know it's because of the prevalence of lead generation mindset
Mhm.
versus demand generation
Yep.
mindset in these
Yep.
companies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Starts with mindset.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, everybody, hey, thanks so much for joining us today. Andre, thanks for great questions.
Yeah.
Trevor, as usual, appreciate you popping in. We got to have Trevor back on the show again, too. He's just been
I
doing
think
such a great job.
I think Trevor has like 8 clones of himself, and he just ends up he's everywhere, ubiquitous everywhere. It's like I
That's
think he
it.
has to share his secret.
Yeah. Diana, thanks for the high in there as well. We're not going to acknowledge the pitch slap that we got in while we were live, but all right, everybody. Hey, any other topics, comments, ideas? You want to be a guest with this and come on board? Like, hey, we're just facilitating this. We want to make it about the community, so just ping Tom or I, and we'll get you to come on live with us or have conversations. But thanks so much, and happy Thursday, Tom. Anything else?
Have a good weekend.
Awesome. See you, everybody.